So, okay,
That's fine.
we're being recorded. I'm not an expert in this platform. We've just been using it for a couple of months, and I can't compare it to other platforms or tell you, how it's better than any other platform because we really didn't look around that much. So that's my disclaimer, and I don't have stock in the company, and I don't have anything relationship with the company, so this is not a commercial for them either. It's the good, bad, and ugly, and mostly good. Um, so that's my disclaimers. On the positive side, this one of the reasons we decided to buy this was because it's a small historian group. We don't have a big budget, so it's only $49. So it fit our budget. I have discovered very good support. I find the online help really easy to use and really well written. And I have called and emailed once each and immediately gotten a response. When I spoke to the person who answered the phone, I think he's the developer, super knowledgeable, really able to explain to me in regular English how to do what I was trying to do. So I found the help really good. And I also find it really easy to use. It's super flexible. You can rename any of the fields that you're looking at. So this is just kind of the base collection list that you can generate on the system. You can reorganize these columns or rename them. So it's really easy to use and figure out, as I mentioned, because the help is so explanatory. It lets you attach images. So as you digitize your documents or pictures, you can attach them to each record. And it lets you search on any keyword anywhere in this, what looks like a spreadsheet. Um, Within this list, you can search on any keyword and find a subset of everything that has that word that you want to look through to try to find something you're looking for, or to get a grouping of things that are related. The cons so far, and it's, as I said, we have only used it a couple of months. You cannot search across these lists, what it calls as a list. You see up here on the main tab, it's called a list. Could also think of it as a collection or a spreadsheet. So you cannot create multiple ones of these. You can't create a list for each collection with all the items in the collection and then search between the lists to find everything that's related to the Civil War or to a particular person or a particular date. So that's a little bit of a downside, and I'll tell you how we got around that in a minute. The other or the other cons, there could be other ones that we would find as we use this more. It does supposedly let you export a file. We haven't tried to do that, so I can't tell you how well that works. I'm assuming it works well and the support is good, but we haven't used every feature in the system, so there may be some more things we stumble across. But other than really searching across the list, that's the only sort of barrier we found. So I'm showing you a list that we created, and we've got 100 and oh, sorry, this is the summary list. I'm going to show you a different one first. All right, so this is the detail list we created. So these are all the individual items in various collections. So you can see that the first part of this list, there's 133 items in here so far. I'll say Blackman photos and then a number. So we initially started following the Dublin Core recommendations and tried to configure the data in each field according to those standards. So when we created the ID, one of the recommendations was that it have a unique identifying number and that that number relate to the digitized document. So these individual entries, IDs, are the name of the collection. So in this case, we had a woman named Ann Blackman who gave us a photo album. So we named this collection Blackman Photos. And then the item number relates to the image that we digitized and attached to this. So in this case, and I'll scroll across, this photo of a Killington Challenge Cup, for example, here's the record of the image. It's a JPEG, and the JPEG number is 4570. So that's why we we stuck with that convention, and using the JPEG number of the image, we use that as the record ID. So you can see in this record, it lets you set up a title. It lets you list who the creator. So in this case, this is a
Linda,
photographer. Yes.
Linda, I'm going to jump in. Since you shared just the window, we're still seeing the first screen that you had with your whole collection.
Okay, let me try to share again.
Ah, there you go.
There we go. Okay. Okay. Thank you for stopping me. Can you see that now?
Yep.
Okay.
It'll make more sense.
It'll make more sense. So sorry about that. So this record number 2, Blackman Photos 4570, that's the JPEG number of this image. It's attached to here. You can see it's a photograph of 2 people winning a challenge cup. You can put in the creator. So this is important for your copyrights in terms of, this is a photographer who was well known taking pictures in our area, and so he owns the copyright. It's his photograph. We got it from this woman, Anne Marie Blackman. We didn't have a date on it. In some cases, we did have dates. You can see they're filled in. You can write a sentence description of what's really in here. And we had some conversation last month about how important it is to describe this in plain English so people know what that item actually is about. We put keywords in this field so that if you're doing a search, you can search on any of those words that are sort of a representation of the key things about this particular item, the names of the people in it, what it was about, who was the creator. We gave it an image type. Again, we listed then where we find it in our collection. So in this case, it's in a red binder labeled with this woman's name on our library shelves. And here's the JPEG number that's attached to it. So in creating this record, it's pretty easy. You can also edit and change anything you want. So it brings up a form basically when you try to edit one of these records or when you're creating a new one. Are you seeing this pop up now?
Nope.
Megan, you cannot see the pop up?
Nope.
Okay.
Yay for Zoom sharing, right? They have to make it overly complicated.
I was so confused by Megan because that's Megan too. It's like, talking to me.
Yes, sorry, Megan from CCTV. Megan from VHRP. Yeah. Okay, yes, we can see your form now, Linda.
Okay, that's weird that you can't see the whole screen. So here's the pop-up that when you edit a record, it gives you a form basically with all these different fields to fill out. And so when you want to attach an image, you just click on the search button. You go to anywhere in your desktop or hard drive or external drive and select the photo you want, and it attaches it to the record or the document number, photo or document. So you can see you're just filling out a form for each of these items. There's a place to put the rights, which we don't have any information in yet. And then it lets you, save that record with the changes you made, or get out of it, cancel it, or go on and do another record. So it's for the navigation, it's pretty easy. I'm going to close this now, and I'm going to have to stop sharing and share again. All right, so back to the detail.
So is that a universal form?
Don't ask questions till later.
To the end.
Questions at the end.
We'll do questions at the end. Yeah, we have a new person joining us. All right, so you can see that we've added all these records in here. If I just click on random ones, you can see in this case, it lets you put multiple photos into one item if that, is the best way to organize it. So these were all related to a particular topic. And I'll show you another type of document that we have in here. Let's see, hang on. This is a collection, that's a photo again. So this is a collection that a family gave us that has multiple things in it, but we gave it this name, sort of a 3-family collection name, and again with the 4-digit image number. And this happens to be documents. These are letters written by this gentleman to his wife on this date. So we've, you know, again, filled in all the information about this and attached the digitized images as well as the translation image. And you can also look at these in, you know, larger as well while you're still in the same record. You probably can't see that. She keeps reminding me. I click on things, you can't see them, but you can click on any one of these images and it brings it up larger so you can take a look at it. So I'll just quickly show you how you can search. Yeah. I had must have hit a subset. So let's say I want to find everything that has this family name in it. And it gives you some selection criteria for that search. If you know, you can either search and it'll kind of work like Excel where it'll bring you to each individual record, and you can't see the search pop-up box now because
I was just going to mention that.
Yeah. But you can create a temporary subset that basically pulls up everything with the name. Okay, why did that not work?
No, they don't know it.
It didn't work. You'll basically get a skinny down subset of everything that had that ID or that name in it. So let me clear that. I don't know why that did that. All right, so I mentioned, and I'm about to wrap up here, I mentioned that one of the one limitation that we found with this is that you can't search across lists. So this list includes everything in our collection. So far we've got 130 some items in it. We will probably have thousands by the time we're done digitizing everything that we want to put in here. So keeping sort of a master list of what our all collections are isn't really doable in this list because everything's in here. We have our Blackman collection, our Mel Holson photos collection, our Moore family, our Fenning family, our diaries from the Pryor family. So this is everything. So Megan's suggestion, which was a great one, was to also create a second list that basically lists all of our collections. So this is what I call our detail list. So I'm going to stop sharing again. And let's see. I think I need to bring it up before I go. Yeah, okay. So this is our second list or second spreadsheet, if you will. So this list is all of the names of all of our collections. So I mentioned that the Blackman, the one that's highlighted here, the Blackman photos was a collection of a photo album, basically a collection of photos from this woman. So we created a record that's sort of like a master record with the name we use the exact same naming convention, the name of the collection, Blackman photos, and gave everything 4-digit zeros. So we're keeping the same sort of structure of the ID number, but the zeros indicate this is the summary level. So this is the collection level. And in this, we put any detail information about what's in the collection, dates when we receive the collection, anything that's generic to the collection itself. So we now have a master list of the 26 collections that we have that we own in the library. So, or in the historians. So this is an easy way to keep track of everything that we have and to also put notes. So for example, we have, I mentioned Bob Perry's a photographer who was in this area for many years. We have reels and reels of film from this guy. We have not viewed them all and we have not digitized them all. So in this master list, I've put, you know, in capital letters, a note to myself that this needs to be reviewed. We need to decide, do we want to keep all these films? Do we want to digitize them all, or there's some we can get rid of? So we use this master as kind of our control list with our to-dos in it, and we found it pretty helpful for that. But in terms of creating a file out to any master database that we might want to participate in, we would use our detail list, which has all our digitized imaged items. So I'm going to stop there and call it a quick overview and turn it over to John.
All right, excuse me. So my name is John Hart. I am actually the outgoing director for the Sullivan Museum and History Center at Norwich University. So I'm actually currently working remote in Syracuse, New York, where I relocated in the fall, wrapping up my time with the university in actually about a month. So we use a database called Rediscovery Proficio Elements. Rediscovery is the cataloging system used by the National Park Service. And it was a database that I was familiar with when I started at Norwich, but when I got there in 2013, the university was using Past Perfect. Right after I became director in 2018, we made the move to Proficio, simply in large part because we were outgrowing Past Perfect. Our ITS department on campus was giving us a little bit of a pause every time the servers would go down. We would risk losing our data if the servers actually crashed out. So we wanted something that was cloud-based so that we knew that it was secured and capable of being accessed from not just the main museum on campus, but anywhere we had our remote displays. So this is fully cloud-based. It also we added on the feature where we could put objects and our archival material, such as it is, online for a searchable database for our users. And so that's actually how this is broken out. So hopefully you can see as I'm making the changes to everything, but we currently utilize essentially 4 different directories. So we have our historical collections, which is your typical, basically based off of Past Perfect format to give you the object ID and collection, the nomenclature information, and then going through the rest of the tabs, you can see the additional information that you would see in like Past Perfect or most other databases. One of the nice things that carried over for us from Past Perfect to this was the ability to have separate archival, library, and photographic collections. These are direct transfers of our data so that we can maintain the separation that we have. We have a special collections and archives on campus, but we maintain all the audiovisual material. So film reels, cassette tapes, beta tapes, VHS, that kind of material. So we needed a way that made sense for us to be able to catalog it, because we are cataloging at an item level as opposed to a collections level for our purposes, just simply based on all of my staff. We're all museum trained. So it's set up so that we can do the same sort of cataloging that we would do if it were an object, which is what we're treating it as. We've begun just recently to experiment with the multi-level system, in large part because we are getting ready sometime within the next 5 to 6 years to transfer back all of the audiovisual material that we currently maintain and bring it back under the control of the archives unit. In order to do that, we wanted to see and we wanted to test if it made sense for the archives in general to use Proficio as their management tool for their records. So we've set up the parent level testing phase essentially just to see how it would work for us. We haven't really decided if it makes the most sense yet, but because archives and the museum are currently working with 2 different database systems, we want to try to figure out what makes the most sense so that we can get down to 1 and have joint access. So I won't get too much into the library and photograph collection, but it does work as we had hoped it would, to provide us with the basic information. And because of the way that our memorandum of understanding is set up with the archives, we aren't actually collecting books or photographs. So that a lot of this is legacy data from our old database, our old past perfect system, with some additional notes of objects that we think they're still around somewhere in the museum. We just haven't quite put hands on them yet for a variety of reasons. So we keep the legacy data around just so that we can keep track of it. The nice feature for us, and let me get back to the side of the system that I'm the most familiar with, is we can work through all of these records. And for us, in order to get them onto the online platform for visitors and researchers, all we have to do is go into an edit record mode and select that, yes, this object or this record is web ready. After that, with some of the upgrades that Rediscovery has been doing lately, they have to change some of the fields that would go on to the website. But in essence, once we click this button, all of the fields that we've designated that we want to have visible to researchers populate overnight, so that everything then, whatever we've done in that batch that day, is available for researchers within 24 hours, unless it's down for maintenance or something. As it stands right now, we have just a little over 20,000 objects in the collection. And we have set up everything that has a photograph to be available to researchers. We're still working on a significant backlog of objects, but primarily for us, it was just getting out there what we had. In large part for our students, we direct them to the online portal fairly regularly so that it's easier for them to access the records from their dorm room, especially on the weekends when we aren't there presently, so that they can just get in there and really start digging into what they're looking for, whether it be something like this, where they're wanting to see a patent model, or even the university's mace that was just used this past weekend for commencement. So we looked at a couple of different systems when we started reviewing databases. They were all cloud-based. And again, because we had remote exhibit spaces on campus, we really needed that type of a system where we could just take a laptop, go to those remote exhibit spaces and be able to inventory, to catalog, to spot check inventories. So that was really important to us. What we didn't realize is within the next like 6-7 months, we were going to be starting to have the talks about the closures due to the pandemic. And if it hadn't been for the move to this cloud system, the museum would have been in really deep trouble going into the pandemic, because we wouldn't have been able to do any work from home when we were basically ordered to by the university's president. So this made a world of difference for that planning purpose. But also for me now, coming up at the end of my time with the university, I've spent the last almost 9 months thereabouts working remote, and day to day, my workflow hasn't changed. I can still get in here and I can still work with everything that I would need to be. Because even though I'm a director, I'm sort of the pseudo collections manager and registrar, while our exhibits curator handles some of the other things. So cheap. We spend over $4,000 a year for the cloud maintenance, which includes our tech support, the hosting of our website for the online portal, as well as just the storage overall. When we began, we had been allotted about 50 gigabytes worth of storage. We only just came to that limit and had to add more storage to our contract, which for us was a somewhat good problem to have. We knew that we were going to be cataloging a lot more, so a lot more photos, more multimedia, and needing to be able to get those into the system and ready to go. I will say, in terms of the cloud systems that we looked at, this was the cheaper option for us all around. We examined TMS, the museum system, as well as the gallery systems, collections management software, and they were very much cost prohibitive. And I know that even $4,000 for some smaller historical societies, that's also cost prohibitive. But the bigger the collection that you work with, we found that we were really outgrowing Past Perfect at a much faster pace than we intended. So we had to make the change in order to keep up with what we were trying to do and to make sure that our data stayed intact in case the server ever did crash with our IT department. We were really worried that that was a real possibility. The system backs up every night. So every change that I make every day or my staff makes every day is automatically backed up every night. And if something were to happen, it's completely repairable. That's taken care of by the vendor. So I'm going to stop there, and if anybody has any questions on the like.
Pat, and I'll start this off with a chat question we had. Pat had asked about specifically about Recollector, but I'm going to ask about both of them for either of you, if you know about being both Mac and PC compatible. And I'm guessing the answer is that yes, they are, because they're both cloud. Well, no, I'll let you both answer this question.
Sure. So Proficio Elements is usable on a Mac. It just runs through the browser, as well as a PC. And we've been testing to see whether or not it works on iPads. We haven't had as much luck with those using it as we wanted to. I went back to campus for my on-campus work days last week or the week before, and I had just picked up a brand new iPhone, and the database worked fine on that. It worked just as well as I expected it to. So I think it's just the outdated iPads that we had floating around that were giving us the problems.
Now, Ed, I'm pretty sure I recall during the process of either looking up help or when we upgraded from the demo version of Recollector to the license version and paid our $50, but I'm pretty sure that they have a Mac version as well. We haven't had any experience with it, but I'm pretty sure it's available. But Recollector is not cloud-based. It does have a backup function, so we can create our own backups on a thumb drive, or I've also put it on my own personal laptop, so you can copy from one to another, but you have to manage that yourself. It doesn't come with all that great vendor support, and the price tag, of course, is fairly reasonable given what it sounds like you're getting, but that would be, cost prohibitive for folks like us.
Other questions from anyone?
I have a question for John about rediscovery. So other than the cloud-based aspect of it, why is it better than Past Perfect? Because I'm at the Bennington Museum, we use Past Perfect. We have Past Perfect online. We don't have the cloud-based version. I don't know that we're going to get it, but I also feel like maybe we're starting to outgrow Past Perfect, but I was just looking at your online website, and I didn't see anything there that it didn't wow me. So why was it better? Why do you love it or not?
So I will freely admit I started out as an intern on Past Perfect. I was actually one of the beta testers way back almost 20 years ago now. So Past Perfect was always my go-to, and I very much enjoyed it. What we had been looking for, in part because we were outgrowing it, just in terms of what we were trying to do day to day, was something that was going to have the vendor be able to pull the data from Past Perfect and plop it into a new system without data loss. So we were really concerned about data integrity. I came from a background in IT myself, where if you put garbage in, you were going to get garbage out, and we didn't want to get into a new system where we had more garbage to have to clean up and fix. So we spent time fixing past perfects entries and then importing those clean records in, but it was all automated. One of the things that sort of drew us to rediscovery is and this is going to get a little technical, so I apologize. The indexing background for past perfect is no longer supported by Microsoft, but at the time that we were looking at rediscovery, their system sort of came out of that same indexing background. So they had created an export function that could pull directly from past perfect directly into Proficio with no data loss. We were pretty much guaranteed a 99% transfer rate with no data loss. The other systems that we had looked at couldn't quite get to that level for a variety of reasons, and that kind of concerned us just because we knew if there was even a 75% success rate, we were still losing that 25% worth of data that we had accumulated with no real way to figure out what that loss was going to be. And you make a good point. The online public facing, the collections.norwich.edu site isn't as spectacular as we would like it. In large part because the main interface for that is set up by our IT and communications office, and that hasn't been a priority to get addressed right away. It's also something that we have to have tweaked with rediscovery and go through a redevelopment phase with them. But with the priorities that we've had at the museum, getting through the bicentennial at the school, we hadn't quite made that sort of our main goal yet. It's on the to-do list for the next director. That's going to be one of the projects that she's going to have to take on. But you're right, it's not the nicest looking research portal that I've ever used. So that part of it was a little disappointing. But the database overall, for us, it was very intuitive to move from past perfect to Proficio, which was the other nice thing. The staff that I have picked up on it within weeks because I had used a form of it with the National Park Service prior. It was something that I could pick up in just a couple of days, which was nice, so that I could then kind of work with the staff on it.
Thank you. That was useful. My other question on the library side of it, does it import and export MARC records?
It does, yeah. I've never tried it, but yes, as long as the MARC fields being imported match up with the MARC fields in the file to be imported, it's a 1-for-1 transfer. And it does have to be in a certain specific order to capture some of the information. So we have to import with our object ID or our item number as the leading field, but then everything after that, as long as it matches, it data pulls perfectly. In fact, I just got done yesterday morning with an import of about 300 records into Proficio, which being able to import that many records rather than hand entering them one at a time is another nice feature. But again, I had to make sure that the fields lined up correctly, and then the system took it.
Thank you.
We've got a couple questions in chat. The first one here is specifically for Recollector, so for you, Linda. It's from Carrie and asks, how can you send information beyond the computer database? And Carrie, feel free to let us know if we are interpreting this wrong, but this seems like a question of, is there a public interface where folks could see this versus being just an internal backend? Is that correct?
That'd be correct.
Yeah, so you can export a file, you can export to Excel, or you can export it to a comma delimited, or I think there's one other option, file. you need a utility to put it in or to display it, but those are the export functions. Does that answer the question?
I think so. I mean, everyone would have Excel. The other thing is that, well, two things. One, you had an ID number, and this was all text with the exception that it had 4 zeros on the end of it. Can you explain what an ID number is when it's a text and the numbers are the same?
So it requires you to set up one, and you can make that up, and or you can tell the system to just number them, and it'll number them 1 through whatever, and each record will be the next digit to that. When we were looking at the Dublin core standards, we understood that that should be a more unique alphanumeric type of ID number. And so that's what we used, and we standardized the numbering part of it to a 4-digit number that in our master list, which is really just for our purposes of keeping a list of everything in our collection, all the collections that we have, we just use the 4 zeros to indicate that's just a collection level record. So again, it's just a list of the 26 collections that we own. In our detail list, we filled that 4-digit number in with a number that matched the actual digitized record number, just to have some data integrity and some linkage there. So does that make sense?
I'll add on to that for you as well, Linda. So Recollector does not follow any sort of standard archival or library standards. You can make the fields whatever you want. So it was developed by someone who is a collector, and so is based along things that they came up with their own fields that they wanted. So there are a number of different templates that you can choose from, but they are not necessarily aligned with specific types of kind of cataloging or archival description that folks might think of. So you have the ability to create whatever you want, which is a good thing and a bad thing. So that's the kind of the one required field that there is this ID number. And so you can edit that and change it to be something else. And so we encouraged Linda and Sheila to go with an identifier rather than a number that was created by the system that would be based on how you added your records in. So there's that piece where it doesn't come with those fields that are Dublin core fields already, or MARC fields, or works within a system like that, and you're able to generate whatever you want, means that things can be a little bit chaotic from the beginning. So that's where some of those pieces come in terms of that ID number that's assigned.
And just a slight follow-up, and it should be obvious, I guess, but for your visuals on that, this was referred to as photographs, but I assume that a PDF would be the same thing? It would allow you to view a PDF?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah,
okay.
You could put an image, anything that's an image you can attach.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Letters or PDFs?
The letters are JPEGs, I thought. Yeah. Sheila just wanted me to add, we don't have a public website where we're sharing all of this. But our idea of getting this to this point, and the reason we're working with the Historical Records Program, is we understand the state might have intention to gather some of this data and share it more widely. So we wanted to start getting our information in the format that we could get it out to them. And that wouldn't be require too much massaging in order to be part of a wider database that everyone could use. So I'm sure it's still a work in progress, but that was our intent.
All right, Pat had a question related to limits or on the number of fields that you might have. See, Pat, I'm going to go ahead and mute you.
Was that a Recollector question?
I think it's kind of
yeah, there's a Recollector question. I can't afford $4,000 because there's other packages that are less money than that. And if Recollector, I currently have a spreadsheet that I inherited that has 19 columns, and we have over 10,000 rows already. So what I'm wondering is how many fields does Recollector have? Obviously, I could rename them to have them the same as what my current system has, but I'm worried about the number. Like our library uses Omeka, but there's only like a half dozen fields on that. So it's totally useless to me. They can't even put in the location. They can't even add a field for location.
So I know I added some fields. I know I added some fields. Oh. Yeah, I think that was gone. Okay. Yeah, I added some fields. I didn't run into a limit. It lets you rename fields too. So it comes with a standard set of, I don't know, a dozen or 15 fields. You can rename them if they're not applicable or don't make sense to you. So you can reuse them for whatever your purpose is. But I know I added some fields as well, and I didn't reach a limit. I'd have to look at the help to see if there is a limit. But I'd found it flexible enough for all of our fields, and there isn't a limit to the number of entries you can have. So for each item, let's say a photograph in your collection, I'm not sure how many different pieces of information you can collect on that item, but I know you can collect thousands of items. I don't think there's a limit on the number of items you can have in your collection with those 12, 20, whatever number of records for each item. Does that make sense? You look puzzled, so I might not be saying it very well.
Yeah.
Puzzled, so I might not be saying it very well.
I think this could be an intermediary system, Megan. That's what I'm thinking. This could be an intermediary to get the stuff off the spreadsheet so that I can take the last year and a half's worth of data and start inputting that, because I'm not touching that spreadsheet. It's a Google Doc and it can disappear too easily. And I know now we've tried to search in it and we can't, because it's just too big. It's unwieldy. So I'm just, this might be, instead of going immediately to something like Catalog It, which was what I was thinking of, maybe using this to rescue the data and then be able to move it into something else later.
Pat, it might work for you. Because it is basically, in a way, it is kind of a spreadsheet with a form that you create to make a spreadsheet. So so it might be an option. The VHRP is working on, we have an instance of it that Rachel got, so we've been testing some things. You can make templates, can be shared to the community of users, and so we're working on creating a Dublin core based template that folks could then just use. I haven't finished it yet. I haven't been able to play around in there enough because it's on one particular laptop. So that does become an issue, is that because it's a downloaded software, it's not as easy for everybody to work in the same instance. So there is that piece of it too, which you might also appreciate, because then you have more of that control over who gets to actually access it. So there is, it is, you know, a limited system, but we can certainly talk about it more too, or you could give Linda a call. You guys aren't that far away from each other. You could visit.
It's you're still pretty far away, but I have flexibility now to be able to do some trips.
We could definitely show you. The other thing Sheila reminded me is you can go to their website, just Google it, Recollector, and you'll find it. Download a demo version. It lets you set up 25 records. And we did that first. We downloaded the demo version. It's free. You can put in 25 records, play around with it, call them, ask questions, read the help, whatever you want, play with it. And then we decided it was working well enough. That was plenty for us to figure out that, yeah, this is a good tool to get us started. And then you just upgrade online. It's very easy to do, and pay your $49 and you're off and running with an unlimited amount of records.
The question I have for John is, why didn't you just go to the Past Perfect that has the online module instead of going to a totally new system?
Yeah, so we had considered that, and because of my time with Past Perfect and working with them, I was in pretty constant contact with them about when that system was going to be deployed. And when we started working to make the change, they still hadn't gotten it ready to deploy out. So it wasn't even available when we were starting to make the move. We would have absolutely considered it as a possibility had it been something that we could have moved into right away rather than having to wait. In no small part, we were in a bit of a hurry to get moving into something just because of the changes that happening with our IT department on campus. It wasn't a guarantee that our data was going to remain safe for much more than, at that point, just a couple of months before they were toying with the idea of taking the server that we were using offline, leaving us with nothing, basically. So yeah, I mean, as somebody who grew up in the museum field using Past Perfect since basically 2000, I'd go back to it in a heartbeat. I think it is a solid system. But I have to say, Proficio has really grown on me. And I can do things in it that I couldn't have even considered in Past Perfect. So there is some good and bad for having made the move.
Any other questions from folks?
Yeah, we just asked a cost question. If somebody could share kind of the rough idea of the cost of Past Perfect. 'Cause that might be our next generation at some point, should we have the budget, but we don't even know what we'd be talking about.
Kelly, yes, perfect.
They have, the price list is all on their website. If you're a member of AASLH, there's a discount. It's not significant. It's like, I don't know, 10, 20% or something. But it's depending on how much of it you get, it's like a few $100s a year. And then if you have the online version and they're hosting your data, I think we pay, it's less than 2,000. I think it's like $1,000 a year, and we have something like 60,000 records on it. No, maybe more. Maybe it's 40,000. I don't remember exactly, but it's not $49, but it's not 4,000 either. It's very affordable, relatively affordable for a small institution, which is why so many people use it. It's definitely not the most glitzy option out there. I think the website that it creates is god ugly. I hate it every single time I see it. It's very recognizable. But it works, and people find our data. Like, you just Google search whatever, and our website shows up. And people contact me about it, like looking for things, willing to spend money on things that we have. So it's good for what it is.
Thanks. That gives us a general idea. Kelly, what organization are you with?
I'm with the Bennington Museum.
Okay, thanks.
And I'm happy to talk about Past Perfect or whatever Past Perfect related question. I have very strong opinions about Past Perfect. Good,
Kelly,
and bad.
Kelly, we may tag you and hopefully find some other folks who are using Past Perfect for another one of these show and tells, because I think Past Perfect would be another, Past Perfect and Catalog It would be some other systems that we would like to show and tell. So I will be tagging you, and I will hopefully find some other folks who will participate and just do one session on Past Perfect.
I would be curious about Catalog It. I've heard a lot about it. I've heard good and bad things about it. I've heard good and bad things.
Yeah. We had one more question from Carrie that I think I'd like to pop in here and see. Linda, have you tried to do any sort of batch uploading from Excel into Recollector?
I haven't. It does have an import function and it has the export function. So presumably the answer to this question is yes, but we haven't tried it. We've been just setting up our initial records. And honestly, I find that the display is almost like an Excel spreadsheet. So it's very easy to look down the columns and see where you might have an aberration or something doesn't match the way you've entered the data for the other records, or something got in the wrong field, and it's just as easy to fix it right there. Just open the form and fix it. But presumably you could do that. I haven't tried.
Thank you. Any other questions from anyone in the last couple of minutes?
Yeah, I've got one question. I'm sorry. I'm trying to type at the same time. The purpose of that question was relative to Excel was could you export to Excel or to Drive through Excel and then re-import it? That would give you at least a remote option. Might be somewhat complicated, but could you do? It seems like you could do that, couldn't you?
Yeah, you could definitely, like I mentioned in the chat back, it wouldn't be an automated process probably because Recollector stores everything kind of within its own system. So that idea of as you make changes, they won't automatically go into your Excel, which you could have in Drive, but you can do that manual process. So every once in a while, you could export your spreadsheet and then upload it to Drive and share it that way if you wanted to share all of that kind of spreadsheet data with people. That's kind of a workaround to try to make a public system with a spreadsheet version, and you might not want to do that going with an internal with Recollector as that internal piece of it. You might want to look for a different system that has public access if that was a really important piece of it for you.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from anyone? If not, thank you so much, Linda and John, for being willing to be our first show and tell presenters. I really appreciate it. I look forward to more. So if other folks are here and they're using systems, or by viewing this, you've thought of other things that you want to know, we already have Catalog It and Past Perfect on our radar of things that we think folks would like to see. But let me know if anything else comes up, or if you want to show what you're doing. We will try to do this again in a couple of months, probably, or after the summer busy season for museum folks that are here. But thank you all for coming. This has been recorded, so I will share the recording out and it will be available on our YouTube channel. So feel free to check back if you want to refresh yourself on what we talked about today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Megan.